On April 10, 2003, while American forces were still securing Baghdad, the National Museum of Iraq was looted. What disappeared in those days was irreplaceable. Approximately 15,000 objects, some estimates run higher, vanished from the museum's collections. Among them were cuneiform tablets, cylinder seals, and artifacts dating to the Sumerian period. Some of the oldest written materials in human history, pressed into wet clay by people who lived 6,000 years ago and who had no way of knowing that what they were recording would still be a subject of argument 6 millennia later. The looting has since been partially documented. Some objects were recovered, many have not been. The question of what exactly was taken, by whom, and whether any of it was targeted rather than opportunistic, has never been fully answered. This much is verifiable. Some of the oldest written records in human history are now missing. And those records described, among other things, a category of beings called the Anunnaki, beings who made decisions, assigned tasks, and in some texts appear to have created humanity itself for a specific purpose.
When we look
What the texts actually say is more interesting than what people claim they say. And the gap between those two things is where the real mystery lives. The Sumerians appeared in southern Mesopotamia, modern Iraq, around 4,500 BCE, and what they left behind constitutes one of the most extraordinary documentary records in human history. They developed one of the earliest writing systems, cuneiform, formed by pressing a reed stylus into wet clay at different angles to create wedge-shaped marks. The clay tablets were then dried or fired, which made them extraordinarily durable. Sumerian cuneiform tablets have survived 6,000 years of burial. The papyrus records of Egypt have not fared nearly as well. What they recorded was comprehensive. Commercial transactions, legal codes, astronomical observations, mathematical tables, administrative records, and mythology, all preserved in the same medium. The Sumerians are credited with some of the earliest recorded legal codes, sophisticated astronomical knowledge including the division of the hour into 60 minutes, which we still use, and the development of complex urban governance systems. The question that recurs in this material is genuinely interesting. Where did this knowledge come from? The Sumerians appear in the archaeological record with a relatively complete system of knowledge already in place. The development period, the centuries of gradual accumulation that we might expect, is not clearly visible in the record. This is a real question. Scholars debate it. The answer is probably something about environmental factors, agricultural surplus, population concentration, and the specific geography of the Tigris-Euphrates Valley creating conditions for rapid institutional development. But the question itself is legitimate. In March 1843, the French consul Paul-Émile Botta began excavations near Khorsabad in northern Iraq. What he found was the ruins of a massive palace complex, halls, walls, reliefs, and inscriptions in cuneiform. The palace was that of Sargon II of Assyria, dating to the 8th century BC. This was not Sumerian, it was Assyrian, a later civilization. But the discovery demonstrated what was hidden beneath the surface of Mesopotamia and opened the systematic excavation of the region. Decades later, archaeologist Leonard Woolley excavated the ancient city of Ur from 1922 to 1934. Ur had been considered mythological, one of the cities mentioned in the Bible as the home of Abraham. Woolley found it. He found the ziggurat, a stepped temple structure oriented with precision to the cardinal directions, which does require knowledge of astronomy and geometry, and the royal cemetery, containing tombs of extraordinary richness. In 1927, he discovered the tomb of Queen Puabi. It contained dozens of kilograms of gold jewelry, elaborate headdresses, musical instruments, and the remains of more than 60 people who had been interred alongside the queen. Servants, guards, and musicians who went into death with her. The scale of the ritual killing required to populate that tomb is something that Sumerian archaeology confronts without looking away from. The written record from Ur and the surrounding region is where the Anunnaki appear most extensively. The Anunnaki in Sumerian and Akkadian texts are not a simple category. The word itself translates roughly as those of heaven and earth, or offspring of Anu, Anu being the sky god, the highest deity in the Mesopotamian pantheon. In the earliest texts, the Anunnaki appear as a collective of powerful deities associated with fate and judgment. In later Akkadian texts, they become more specifically the gods of the underworld, while the Igigi are the heavenly gods. The texts that describe them are genuine and have been translated by scholars for over a century. The Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, describes the creation of humanity from the blood of a slain god mixed with clay. The Epic of Atrahasis describes humanity's creation as labor-saving measure. The lesser gods, the Igigi, rebelled against their work, and humanity was created to perform it instead. When humanity became too numerous and too noisy, the gods attempted to reduce the population through plague, drought, and finally flood. The flood narrative in Atrahasis corresponds closely to the biblical flood story. The same warning to a single righteous man, the same vessel, the same aftermath. The Sumerian version centers on a figure called Ziusudra, who receives the warning, builds a boat, survives, and is afterwards granted divine status. Life like that of the gods. The Sumerian King List, a real document preserved in multiple copies, lists rulers before and after the flood with drastically different reign lengths. Pre-flood rulers are credited with tens of thousands of years. Post-flood rulers are credited with decades. At a specific point in the text, a single line. The flood swept across the land. After that line, everything changes. The physical evidence for a catastrophic flood in Mesopotamia is real. Archaeologists at Shuruppak and other sites in southern Iraq have found thick layers of silt, waterborne sediment deposited in events far larger than ordinary flooding. These layers are dated to approximately the late 3rd millennium BC, which is within the period the Sumerian texts describe. Similar deposits have been found at multiple sites, though at different stratigraphic levels, suggesting multiple flood events rather than a single one. The geological record adds context. After the last ice age, sea levels globally rose by approximately 120 meters as the glaciers melted. For people living in coastal regions or low-lying river valleys, this was catastrophic on a timescale of generations. Land that communities had lived on for centuries disappeared underwater. It looked like the end of the world because, for the communities it affected, it was. The prevalence of flood myths across many ancient cultures reflects this shared geological reality. The specific stories differ in their details, their divine cast, their geography. But the structural elements, warning, survivor, vessel, new beginning, appear across enough distinct traditions to suggest they are recording something that actually happened, filtered through the interpretive frameworks of each culture. What the texts say happened is distinct from what actually happened. The Sumerians recorded a flood controlled by divine decision. The geology suggests a long period of rising seas and catastrophic flooding events. Both things can be true simultaneously. A real event, recorded through the theological framework available to the people who experienced it. Zechariah. Sitchin published The 12th Planet in 1976, arguing that the Anunnaki were not gods, but extraterrestrials from a planet called Nibiru, that they had genetically engineered humanity as a labor force, and that their civilization was the source of Sumerian knowledge. Sitchin's work is worth discussing honestly because the questions he asked, why did Sumerian civilization appear so suddenly? What are the Anunnaki? What is Nibiru? Are real questions derived from real texts. His translations, however, were rejected by professional Assyriologists who found them to contain errors and interpretations unsupported by the original cuneiform. Nibiru in Sumerian texts is most likely a reference to Jupiter or to a specific astronomical phenomenon, not to a planet beyond Neptune. There is no peer-reviewed astronomical evidence for a hidden planet with the orbit Sitchin described. The DNA claims that have circulated in connection with elongated skulls, including assertions about 2016 analyses producing results that could not be matched to human DNA, are not supported by published peer-reviewed research. Elongated skulls found in various cultures, including in South America, are generally explained by a well-documented practice of deliberate cranial modification applied in infancy. This practice changes the shape, but not the volume of the skull. Some skulls with increased volume have been found. These remain subjects of legitimate archaeological investigation without requiring an extraterrestrial explanation. The Baghdad Battery, pottery jars found near Baghdad that some researchers proposed could have generated electricity, is real as an artifact. Its function is genuinely debated. It may have been used for electroplating, or may have served an entirely different purpose. It does not constitute evidence of advanced ancient technology of the kind pseudo-archaeological claims require. What the Sumerians actually left is extraordinary enough without embellishment. A writing system that preserved the oldest flood narrative we have, predating the biblical version by at least 1,000 years. Legal codes that contain recognizable principles still embedded in modern law. Mathematical systems we still use to divide the hour. Astronomical records that demonstrate systematic observation of the sky across multiple human generations. And a theology that placed humanity at the center of a cosmic labor dispute, created to do the work the gods no longer wanted to perform. The tomb of Queen Puabi contains 60 human beings who were killed to accompany her into death. That is not a mystery that requires extraterrestrials to explain. That is a documented feature of Sumerian royal burial practice, and it is disturbing on its own terms, in its own time, without any additional interpretation required. The questions the Sumerians left are genuine. Where did their knowledge come from? What happened to their civilization? What do the extreme reign lengths in the King List actually represent? These are questions scholars work on, argue about, and do not have complete answers to. That is what makes this material interesting. Not that it proves something sensational, but that it genuinely does not have simple answers. I want to be clear about something regarding this video. The original material I was working from mixes documented historical facts with pseudo-scientific claims, specifically the DNA anomaly assertions, the alien contact interpretation, and the Nibiru as real planet argument. I've presented the verified material and been direct about where the evidence runs out. Zechariah Sitchin asked genuinely interesting questions. His answers were rejected by the scholars who actually read cuneiform, and the rejection was based on specific translation errors and interpretive leaps that the texts do not support. This is different from saying the questions themselves are uninteresting. What I find genuinely compelling about Sumerian civilization is not the alien theory. It's the moment in the Epic of Atrahasis where the gods decide humanity has gotten too loud and too numerous and needs to be reduced. And the flood that follows is not random punishment. It is a management decision. Whatever the Sumerians were processing when they wrote that, they were describing a relationship between humanity and its creators that is transactional, contested, and ultimately unstable. That is a remarkably modern anxiety for a text that is 4,000 years old. The Baghdad Museum looting in 2003 destroyed or dispersed objects that no one will ever read again. Some of what was lost was irreplaceable. Whether the most interesting tablets were already translated before they disappeared, or whether something important is now genuinely gone, that uncertainty is real, and it is its own kind of loss. The Anunnaki were not aliens. but the civilization that imagined them was extraordinary. That is enough. I'll see you in the dark.